Another day, another Legacy sequel. Yay! So Netflix has decided to not reboot Texas Chainsaw Massacre like they did in 2003, I think it was, but this time they're like, actually, let's just copy Halloween 2019. Let's just copy that entire formula. Let's bring back the original Final Girl instead of the classic beloved Laurie Strode. Let's bring back everyone's second favorite Final Girl. The iconic Sally. So she's back, and we're scrapping all the sequels, every single one of them. All that continuity, it's gone. All of it, it's gone. This time, it's just a straight up sequel to the original. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but because, we're a legacy sequel, it's just called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's fine. It's okay. The first half is pretty bad. It's just very boring and bland, and it just doesn't have that grit and grimy, dirty kind of horrible grubbiness that the original has. I didn't expect it to, though, because it's a movie made in 2022, or last year probably, but it's like, these films don't have that feeling anymore. I didn't expect it to, but the one thing that I absolutely didn't expect is that it would unintentionally, I have to imagine unintentionally, the feeling of this movie doesn't scream to me intentional horror comedy. But this film in the back half is so funny, it's so stupid, it's so dumb, and it feels so unintentional that makes it even funnier. But this film is just like so tonally mismatched. It has no idea what it wants to be. Cardinal horror sin. Bad characters. Just characters I don't care about. Like, I want to feel something when they die. I don't want to just be like, oh god, that's horrible and disgusting. And then 2 minutes later, just be like, oh yeah, they died, I guess. Who cares? Who cares? That's the worst thing a horror film can do. And this film is that personified. As soon as this film starts and we have our 4 leads, I've never cared less. I've never cared less. Like, the original film, I don't love them. There's nothing like super memorable about any of them. But there's like, I don't know, just an inherent likeness to them. Like, these characters are immensely unlikable. I detested all of them except for one, our final girl, which at least I liked her kind of, but her storyline as well felt really, really weird. So if this was going to be the serious, gritty, dirty, horrible horror film that it was trying to be, and it kind of actually worked on that and had good writing and good characterization, I think the fact that she's a survivor of a school shooting could work and be really tragic and heartbreaking, all these things, but it's just really surface level, like the gentrification theme, just vague. It's just they say it once or twice. It doesn't really feel like it comes into the storyline. She's just kind of, she says she's traumatized by it, but there's never really scenes about it. I think they've missed a real huge opportunity by having Sally essentially come in as the old, haggard, and she even says this exact same line as Laurie Strode does in the new Halloween, where she's like, I've been waiting 50 years for this. Oh, the showdown of a lifetime. But she says it, but I don't feel it. There's, no character to her at all. There's a moment where she holds up like a picture from the original, and I'm like, the original characters, And that's it. I just have to infer everything. She gets one little sad glance, and that's it. This character who's the new Sally, the survivor of the school shooting, her and Sally could have had scenes together, dialogue together, whereas the only time they meet is 5 minutes before the end of the movie. This movie is so brief. At 80 minutes max. It's just in and out. Boom, 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 done. Which is good, but also this film could have maybe gone with, I don't know, some actual scenes with characters talking and stuff, because there's so much to kind of use, the idea of trauma, the idea of past trauma haunting her for so long. And I guess when they're like, how do we make a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Let's copy Halloween, because that was really successful. But then they're like, let's not copy it fully. Let's not give our Sally any actual character, any scenes examining that trauma or anything like that. Almost every single kill, except for maybe the first one, is hilarious and stupid and dumb and over the top and unintentionally so. I have to believe it's unintentional. There's one joke in this film when he gets on the party bus and everyone's partying. They're like, we're partying. And, Leatherface appears, he's got his chainsaw ready to kill them all, covered in blood, covered with skin on his face, clearly a serial killer monster murderer, and everyone just gets their phones out. And one guy has the audacity to be like, if you do anything, mister, you're cancelled. Dude, what? And so, of course, Leatherface just brutally murders them all. And there's a kind of a half joke where people are like, that looks so fake, on all the Instagram things on their phone. So I guess that's a comment on society or something. So much of this film is just half-baked and half-assed. And I don't need like heaps of kind of character work. But when this movie kind of copies Halloween 2019 with the original final girl coming back 50 years later to fight her masked killer character, I can't help but just go back to that film and be like, at least they handled trauma and like past trauma and being haunted by it and being like unable to like, you know, grow past that. And so many really interesting ideas with that character and how it's kind of ruined her daughter's life and her daughter's life and all these kind of things are really interesting. This film just has Sally just look at a photo of the original cast and be like, I'm sad. And I'm like, of course you're sad. They all died. But I don't get anything. There's like little hints at it where she's like a butcher cutting up like a pig. And I'm like, okay, has she kind of gone a bit savage because of this? But we don't really get any of that. She appears in the last 20 minutes of the movie and she's just like, girls, get in the car. I've got to face off with Leatherface. And she goes to kill him, but he doesn't remember her, so she quotes Heisenberg for some reason, and she's just like, say my name, and then doesn't kill him for reasons, and then 10 seconds later, with no other character beat in between, just starts trying to kill him. But from a distance where, you know, it has no effect. Because of story reasons. This film has lots of little moments that kind of just feel like it's like, why didn't someone just say something? Because of story, because the plot needs to happen. Sure, fine, it's a stupid, dumb horror film. What did I expect? But so many times a character would get on the big party bus and they'd be traumatized because they've just seen someone's face cut open. And instead of telling anyone what's happening, they just sit there being like, oh, don't go outside. Why? Maybe explain why. Then someone will go outside and they're like, don't go outside. Tell her why. Tell her why she shouldn't go outside. There's a man killing people. Like, oh, it's just so stupid, but like not in the funny, like super over the top way where I'm kind of like, oh, look at them. They're like playing with the stupid tropes of old horror films or anything like that. No. This isn't a Scream legacy sequel. This isn't having fun with it. It feels really brutal and mean, except then suddenly after, like during the party bus sequence, as soon as that influencer Instagram dude dies, the film turns bonkers insane and has way more in common with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 with chainsaw sword fights and limbs throwing everywhere and just absolute crazy heightened nonsense. And it's just like such a tonal whiplash from like the rest of the film and like the whole gentrification theme or attempt at a theme and all the kind of feelings with like they try and like sympathize Leatherface, but then they have obscene moments where he's throwing the chainsaw. I swear he throws it like 3 times. Every time hilarious, absolutely stupid. He's a maniac and it's ridiculous and over the top. You know, there's a moment where he kills Sally and it's like shocking and horrific because it's like he's brutally chopping her up with the chainsaw and she's dead. He killed the original final girl just like that. So brief and quick. And then it's like, oh, you thought it was going to be a horrific moment? No, it's a stupid, big, over-the-top, silly comedy moment. And he lifts her up into the sky and he's waving her about like she's a rag doll. Then he hurls her like 20 meters away. But of course, she's not even dead. She's like shooting off rounds later and giving people wise things, being like, don't run away, otherwise you'll be running for the rest of your life. That is almost a great line if these characters had had any interaction together and everything wasn't just super surface level to pretend to be playing with ideas and themes and character arcs. But the girl who survived the school shooting, she says she's traumatized by it, but we never really get anything from her. And I really feel like there's a missed opportunity to do a really interesting kind of like someone who was traumatized from the original film to now someone who's already traumatized before this film begins and to have them team up. But they spend about 15 seconds of screen time in which Sally just locks them in the back of a car and kind of uses them as bait. But kind of not, because she just chases Leatherface and doesn't kill him. For reasons. I'm okay with kind of humanizing Leatherface in like a tiny little way, like the idea of him holding his mother's dress and being like, oh, I'm sad. And you're like, okay, this giant, huge, horrific cannibal monster man, you know, at least he loves his mother. Sure, okay, that's a little nice kind of wrinkle on, but the idea that all the main characters, like, the whole plot point of the first 30 minutes is they're coming to, you know, make this little, like, ghost town into a big, you know, I don't know, hipster kind of new town or whatever the hell they're doing, gentrification or whatever, and then they're just like, get out of this house, old woman, you get out of here, you potentially a racist old woman, get out of here. and then she has like a heart attack and dies, and they're like, oh, we feel guilty, we killed her. What? You're gonna humanize the mother of Leatherface and then make Leatherface like, is he almost an anti-hero? Killing, like avenging his mother by killing her killers? Is that what you're saying? It's very confusing, very muddled, totally unnecessary. Also, I don't know, if this is, I don't know, maybe she's in the sequels or whatever, but this is just going off the original film. Where was the mother? She's like the only character not in that film. So, I don't know. Just like, where was she? She clearly knows who Leatherface is, so screw her. She's a monster. Like, she's aiding and abetting her horrific Leatherface son, who's a crazy serial killer monster murderer, man. So, I don't know. No sympathy there. Really weird, but it's weird they're trying to make us have sympathy, so didn't really like that. There's almost an interesting idea of the subversion of the characters, like the gas station creepy guy who's like, don't go into this town. And he turns out to kind of, you know, be a nice small town hick kind of character, and he tries to help them. But it's so half-assed, it's so half-baked, everything just feels so surface level. Just, I don't know, the writing is so like, they just like came up with the idea like, oh, what if the gas station guy isn't creepy? And then they didn't really do anything more with it. He's not creepy, he tries to stop them, he dies. Good enough. It only has to be 80 minutes, so there's no time. Well, maybe you should have made time. Like, the new Halloween works so well because they examine trauma. They examine how it's affected her and her family. And there's so many amazing scenes with Laurie Strode. And so you're bringing back Sally, the character, but you do nothing with her. And it's such a weird, wasted opportunity. I mean, Laurie Strode's like a classic, famous, I don't know, iconic final girl. And Sally is just, she's also a final girl, I guess, is the most you can say. Like, she's very unmemorable as a character, so I guess who cares? But you've brought her back, so maybe utilize that and do something with it. Or maybe don't. Maybe just kill her, throw her in the air, and then throw her into a dumpster, like they do. Maybe do that. This film was really ugly and boring and very, like, uninteresting to look at. It's very, like, just by the numbers, new modern kind of slasher horror film looking. It's very clean. I mean, I didn't expect it to have that dirty, grubby, grimy feeling of that first movie, but in the first movie, the atmosphere from the very first shot is so gross, so like you can feel the slimy, grubby, dirty feeling of the film. The atmosphere is so unpleasant and you have a sick feeling the whole time. There's something like unnerving and horrifically scary about that whole first film. This film is nothing. There is no atmosphere. There is no feeling to it. There's no substance to it. There is a couple of really beautiful shots in the sunflower field, but I mean, sure, 3 or 4 really beautiful shots in a 80-minute movie. That's really not good enough. The film has no feeling, no life to it. Until the back half where it kind of gets so absurd that it's almost mildly amusing. Like the fact that Leatherface, they've killed him, they've thrown him into a big pool in the house or whatever, and they're like, they got away. There's 2 final girls this time. Subverting expectations all over the place. Oh, how cool. And they get in the car and she's like, oh, actually, I changed my mind. Maybe I do want to stay in this town. And they have a good old chuckle. And I'm sitting there being like, I hate how they killed Leatherface at the end, where she swipes him with the chainsaw, because it clearly didn't like kill him. So the classic sequel baiting, and it's just like, I don't know, just kill him. Like, you're doing this film, just kill him. But because actually, no, jump horror scare, classic end of a movie horror scare. He grabs the other sister, rips her out of the car, and then just chops her head off. He just savagely chops her head off, holds it up, and he's like, hilarious, ridiculous, so over the top. Maybe it's just because I cared so little about the characters and just the shock and awe of it hit me in a way that I laughed. But I really feel like this film was trying to make me be like, oh no, oh. Instead, hilarious. He's waving the chainsaw about like it's the end of the last film as our final girl screams at her sister being decapitated. And it's super over the top, super crazy, super ridiculous. But a hilarious way to end this film, because the last action fight is just stupid and dumb. He's throwing his chainsaw, everyone's surviving, being thrown across rooms. There's one point where Leatherface is at the top of the staircase and he throws a sledgehammer at her and it hits her and she goes flying like it's a superhero film, smashes through all the boardwalk kind of timber, and she's like, oh my god, she is so dead. Like, you couldn't possibly survive that. But no, she's fine. She just starts running about under the house, and like, she wasn't just hurled across a room via a sledgehammer from a giant man. There are so many just weird little stupid bits. This film was such a total nightmare, but I had way more fun with it. But I kind of felt like I was laughing at the film and how stupid it was, rather than kind of laughing with the film, like, say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is so clearly over the top and ridiculous. But maybe I misread the genre and the feeling of this film and the tone. Maybe it was an intentional horror comedy. Maybe make it feel like that, though, rather than making a horror film that feels like you've unintentionally made it really stupid and dumb and over the top and stupid. I don't know what this is. It's bad. It's bad. It's real bad.